All right, hello and welcome back to the Generative Landscape Discussion Series. Today we're here with Enzyme Zoo, who is an artist and developer, and hopefully here to speak with us about some of the tools and communities that are springing up around these new models and techniques. So Enzyme Zoo, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I'd love to dive into some of the work that you're doing with Deforum and these other tools. But maybe before we dive into that, could you give us just a little bit of background as to how you ended up in this space, how you got into AI art?
Right. Well, I had been a developer and an amateur artist, but about a year ago, I saw a Pity VQ zooming video on Twitter, and it looked like a a fractal video, but it was coherent and made out of actual things you could see and recognize objects. So I followed that into the Discord, and there's this vibrant community of people that were making art with AI, and I just dived into it, and it's all my free time is this now.
Right.
Oh.
And this sort of community, like maybe just for those who aren't in it, what does it look like? How are people sharing code, or what are the things that are happening there that you're so excited about?
Right, so a lot of these tools are being shared through Colab, which is a tool for from Google where you just open up on your browser and you can use their GPUs remotely, which is really important for a lot of people that can't afford to buy a GPU. I know that was me.
Yeah.
And yeah, all the code is right there, and you press play, you put in your prompt, and it spits out your images.
Cool.
And
And you work on, well, you've worked on a number of these. I think the first one I became aware of was the Jax Diffusion notebooks. Am I right that you were one of the people involved in those?
yeah, so N Shepherd released a diffusion notebook in Jax a little over a year ago, I think. And um, some people have been modifying it, like Human was modifying it to add upstitching. And I made a different method of upstitching, and I added um, in painting to it. And that also happened in Disco Diffusion, which is another notebook for diffusion. And there's this whole vibrant community of people that are modifying these notebooks and forking them. And we're communicating through Discord and having all sorts of uh, conversations, sharing our art, sharing our uh, tools that we find on Twitter or other Discords, and adding them to our notebooks and sharing prompts. And it's a really vibrant community.
Yeah, it's been really great to sort of watch and be a part of that, and I really enjoyed seeing the sort of evolution as well. So like right back at the start, it was kind of like okay, someone would put out a collab notebook. This is my thing, and then someone else would make their own version, add one or two things, and so you had this very like splintered, kind of fragmented space, with a million and one like slight variations of Catherine's original notebook or, one of the starting points. But what I'm starting to see now, and you mentioned a couple, the Disco Diffusion was the big first popular one, where it's like, okay, let's actually, instead of everyone doing their own thing, yeah, let's work together and bring in. And so the one that I think you're involved with now, and that I've also been playing around with, is called Deforum, just another notebook specifically for like animation. But what's really astounding is to see like a new paper will come out, or someone will invent like a new sampler or some new technique, and within a day, someone's got their pull request on the GitHub, or they're sharing some code in the Discord. Hey, I figured out how to do this thing, and it gets integrated into these tools. So I'll share, like I'll put a brief screen recording or something of the Deforum notebook. It's got an almost overwhelming number of options now, but it's been really cool to just watch that like grow as all of these features are added.
Oh yes, it's still growing.
Mm.
Yeah, it started out there were only a few dials that you could turn, like CFG scale and size, but it has grown quite a bit. Now you got animations, you're going to have like clip guidance and other kinds of guidance, which tenfold increases the amount of dials you could turn,
Yeah.
which can get overwhelming for a lot of people. But we're we work to make the default settings good so that if you're just starting out in the space, you can just press play and
Yeah.
make something cool.
Yeah, and the other good thing about like this whole idea of community is that if you're not sure what those dials do, I see every day just discussions of like, hey, I'm trying to do X, but it looks like this. What am I doing wrong, or what do I change? And there's a lot of helpful people to share some
Right,
examples
yeah.
or yeah, give that back.
People are stepping up. They're really enthusiastic. Like a few days ago, we released version 0.5, and a few days later, someone had released, they'd made a YouTube tutorial about the feature that I implemented, which is, it's really incredible to see that.
Yeah, yeah, that's super cool. And I'll link all of these resources, by the way, if you're watching this, just check the description or the sort of accompanying notes. We'll have links to all of this, even if it's slightly outdated by the time this comes out. Great. So kind of on that, I was a little bit curious, just especially as things are consolidating and starting to get a bit more not professional, but I guess kind of like more these big serious endeavors. What does the development stack look like? Right, it's Discord for discussions and Colab for sharing the final result. But are there any other tools or ways of managing this growing complexity that you're starting to use?
Right, yeah, GitHub. We've been using GitHub, and we're using it more and more. Like we just opened the issues feature on GitHub, which will help keep us much more organized. Organization is becoming really important because we have a lot of volunteers working on this forum.
Right. And is that something that, like, so say someone's taking this course, they've got a bit of an understanding of how things are going. Do you think that there's still a need for more people contributing, or is there other ways that they can help out the project? Like, what does that look like for someone new wanting to come in and be helpful?
Absolutely, we need more people helping because the AI art technology is exploding. There's something new every day. I can't keep up. We have a long to-do list for developers. So if you're a developer, you could do a pull request on GitHub. You could, even if you're not a developer, you could submit an issue on GitHub. We have a separate Discord for people that are developing Deforum, where we can talk about what features are important that we could implement. But this is all made of volunteers. Each person works on what interests them to add to the Deforum notebook. And don't think you need to be a developer to get involved. We need people to help us organize social media, testing the notebook before it's released. That's really important. There are
Yeah.
people that are making tutorials on their own,
Yeah, that
which is
documentation
fantastic.
aspect is a good way for, getting to know the notebook and then also, yeah, contributing without having to have quite as much coding skill. Um,
Right.
yeah, on that kind of like, so that skill level topic, one I guess common misconception is like, oh, I kind of need a traditional machine learning background, maybe like a PhD or something like that to start playing with these models. Has that been your experience and like the community in general, or yeah, what does the kind of makeup of your average AI art coder look like?
I don't have a PhD.
Same.
Yeah, because Colab has the code right in your face. I'm I know people who have learned to code because of the AI art scene, because you can see the code right there and play with it. Creative coding is a big part of the AI art space. So you don't need to start out as a developer to contribute. But yeah, we have people of all skill levels, PhDs to beginner coders contributing.
It's really exciting to me to see that, and I always enjoy. Yeah, it's like you start out just saying, oh, I'd love to like make it twist around as we go, and like a month later, these people are introspecting into these big models or fine tuning their own and kind of very
Yeah,
rough and
yeah.
ready diving in. Yeah, super
Yeah,
cool.
you can peel away the onion from the top level input all the way down, and it to some degree it's a black box for everybody,
Yeah,
neural networks themselves.
yeah.
So there's always more to learn.
Well, that's I guess yeah, that's always been my motivation as well, is trying to help slowly, yeah, dig away at those layers of abstraction. And I think there's more and more stuff coming out as people build that understanding. People are also starting to communicate that, which is really exciting. Okay, so that's been great. That's like a lot of the main things I wanted to cover around the tools. But I also am kind of belatedly realizing like we haven't talked much about the art side of things. And I know you have a bit of traditional art background, but also these days just a really good um, yeah, AI artist, if that's the term that you're happiest with, using these tools to not just like for the tool's sake, but to make some really compelling images. So do you have any thoughts to share on like that? What's your process? How do you balance playing with the tools versus actually creating the art? Um, yeah, how have you
Yeah,
found that?
that's been difficult for me lately, balancing making the tools, which is kind of an art in itself, and making the visual art because the space is just accelerating, and then I want to put all of these features into Deforum so that more people can access them. But I only have so much time, and I haven't made any actual visual art for about a month now. But what I used to do was I'd add a feature, play with the code in the notebook, and then as I was testing that, that's how I made my art. It's part of the testing process. But now we have testers in Deforum, so I can't really do that. I mean, I could do that,
Yeah.
but I don't get as much of a chance to make it as part of the development process. So I need to create art for myself and set time aside.
Yeah, it's such a funny like dilemma to be in. It's like saying, oh, I'm spending all my time like trimming my paintbrushes and things, but it really is. I found the same. There was a phase where I was doing lots and lots and lots of pictures, and now it's like I don't even know these models from from like a prompting side and a like creative directing side. Yeah, it's like where do you find the time to just sit for hours and try and get that picture out of your head onto the screen? So yeah, I think in the same boat as you, is that's somewhere on the to-do list for the next little while, is take a step back, start making
Yeah.
some images again. Cool. And you're like how do you feel it compares to like the more traditional media or artistic approaches? Like when you were making a lot more of these images, how did you find what's the same, what's different between those two processes?
Well, to some degree, when you're making traditional art, unless you're extremely experienced, what you draw or paint isn't going to look exactly what's in your head. And sometimes, because of that, you discover something new and cool. And it's that times 10 for AI art. You put in a prompt, and it's always something new because you don't know exactly what it's going to look like. But you can always converge. Like, AI art a is just another tool in the pipeline. So it's a really smart paintbrush.
I like that way of
There's no
looking at it.
right.
Yeah. Lovely. Okay. Well, thank you so much. This has been really great to hear from you and to hear your experience. And I'm sure this will be really exciting for those who are, yeah, looking for that community, looking for ways to get involved. Before we end, are there any final thoughts you'd like to leave us with? Anything to end off on?
Um, no, that's good.
All right.
Thank you so much for talking to me.
Yeah, such a pleasure.